the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists is pretty left-leaning. They were formed after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to monitor threats to the species, threats to humanity, direct threats to the survival of our species. So naturally, you would probably realize that at some point, if the thing escaped from the lab, they probably want to know about it. Like, I think this transcends their politics. We have only just touched the tip of the iceberg of analyzing the response and the travesty that was the response of the last 15 months. And the reason I'm talking about it now is because Dr. Anthony Fauci's emails have come out through a Freedom of Information Act request. It wasn't leaked by Russia. It was a Freedom of Information Act request. And it's hilarious to look at CNN's coverage. It's like, his emails show that he didn't feel muzzled by Donald Trump. Well, hello, he said that from the podium. Who cares at this point? We know he's a two-faced, lying dog pony soldier. No, we know he's a little weasel courtier who curries favor with whoever he needs to. Obvious. So what is the real story behind the emails? The real story, there's three main stories, okay? I would say the biggest one probably is that he knew, of course he knew, about all of the experimentation. It wasn't just one experiment, that 2015 one with Ralph Baric and Shi Zhengli, Dr. Shi Zhengli from Wuhan, China, the bat lady. They did an experiment in Raleigh, North Carolina, in 2015 before the Wuhan Institute of Virology even opened. And it was this study that got a lot of attention because it was pretty easy to find on the web, and it took me months to understand it. It was like learning a new language, basically. It didn't look great. It was basically them making a chimera virus, which it actually says that they made a chimeric virus. Chimera is a Greek term to describe a hybrid animal or humanoid form, like the labors of Hercules. I guess he had to do battle with a chimera, as I recall. So chimera just means like a hybrid life form. What we found out 2 days ago is that Fauci actually received that study as a reminder. Hey, look at this, because it was a coronavirus. It was a bat coronavirus. They took one of them, the spike protein, from it, and they put it into the DNA backbone of the other. They were acting like they were trying to avoid the next pandemic, because as we've had canonized into the public awareness, every emerging virus has developed naturally, right? Well, in all my research, I realized that's not settled at all. That's not settled at all. It's weird. Fauci's very vested in saying that over and over. Interesting. SARS-1 escaped from a lab in Beijing in 2004. And the only reason that we know that today is that the Director General of the World Health Organization was not a China apologist. He clearly let his people report things to scientific journals. So they talked about the SARS-1 escaping the lab. They had just ended the pandemic in 2003, right? And they used convalescent plasma, by the way. So they were not interested in it getting out throughout the whole world at that point. They used convalescent plasma to help cure SARS, as well as contact tracing. And so they kept it limited mostly to Asia. It escaped from the lab in 2004 in Beijing. And I think, after analyzing everything, that this angered China very, 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 very much, because it shows there was a precedent. They just plain old do not want to open the gates of transparency. However, they will talk about transparency all day long. We're in this together. And propaganda and conspiracy theories and rumor do not help this process at all. Funny thing is, that kind of language was in the letter in the Lancet that came out February 19th, 2020. And that letter in the Lancet was signed by 28 scientists, Western scientists. And basically, the lingo was indistinguishable from Chinese government statements. We must pull through for the greater good. La, 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 la. Peter Daszak, who is the president of EcoHealth Alliance, he's a virologist. He knows Dr. Fauci. There were emails that showed that he helped write that letter, and it was a total whitewash. It's basically said that we know definitively from these 15 sources with footnotes that SARS-2 derived naturally. It evolved naturally. This in spite of the patients that first fell ill being in the same city of China's only level 4 biolab. And I'm not contradicting myself, because when it escaped the lab in Beijing, that wasn't a level 4 biolab. It was level 3, because SARS-1 is considered level 3. Anthony Fauci, of course, knew all of this. He also knew that in the last 20 years, there's been an explosion of building new labs everywhere around the world. And that there were scientists who were concerned about this, because apparently in level 4 bio lab, it was too much safety precautions for SARS-1. But, you know, obviously if you're going to be creating engineered viruses, chimeric viruses, you're going to probably need level 4 labs. So they were built all over the world. I don't have direct evidence that the genome, I don't understand genetics enough, DNA, RNA, I'm learning, but to say definitively that it came from the Wuhan lab, I'm just saying protesting rumor and conspiracy theory before anything has even happened or anything has even been proven is a little odd. Obviously, the mainstream media is now getting a hold of this story. This is really due to the work of Nicholas Wade, who was a New York Times reporter for a long time. He wrote something that made a huge impact on the whole world on May 5th. And it was on the website of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Now, the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists is pretty left-leaning. They were formed after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to monitor threats to the species, threats to humanity, direct threats to the survival of our species. So naturally, you would probably realize that at some point, if the thing escaped from the lab, they probably want to know about it. The Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists also has a doomsday clock. Yeah, they're really into this. And I'm glad, actually. And it's based on, the information that comes out about things going on in the world that might be dangerous to the survival of our species. When I saw that that's who these people were who blew this story open after it had been completely hidden by China and covered up, I actually had some hope, because again, these people are not right-wing, they're not conspiracy theorists, they're scientists. And then lo and behold, we start to see a lot of scientists have been saying this all along, but their voices were silenced. They were censored. They weren't interviewed. They were ignored. They even sent Dr. Fauci emails telling him that they believe, looking at the genome, which leaked out, by the way, the genome leaked out by a Chinese doctor in Wuhan, but he wasn't supposed to do that. I don't know why China wouldn't release the genome anyway, because obviously you have to create a test. But people were writing Dr. Fauci. Scientists he used to work with, people he knew, who were writing him saying, hey, this doesn't look natural, like a natural evolution. This looks designed. All the while he is saying what China was saying. There's no evidence that it came from the lab, but we'll do a thorough investigation with complete transparency. And guess who says transparency all the time? All the time. Jen Psaki. If you watch her and you also think back how when Obama first took office, I was like, why are there some journalists saying that he's cracking down on the press more than any other president before? I don't believe that. How could that be? That couldn't be. That can't be. But we would always hear these, mellifluous, calming words like transparency. Never really found out much, though. And they censored and they spied on journalists who were writing about Iran and some of the more hidden Iran operations with Al-Qaeda, etc., etc. So more of the same with Jen Psaki. She also worked in the Obama administration, but she didn't have as high of a position. So transparency. We are committed to transparency, and we will circle back to you with that transparency. Back to Fauci. He is part of that machine. What I want to know is, who does Fauci really work for? Like in Austin Powers 1, when he goes into the casino in Las Vegas and Roseanne Barr's ex-husband he came out in a cowboy outfit and he's like, whoa, that is one crazy getup to Austin Powers. And then Austin Powers was like, okay. And then he went and he interrogated this Irish terrorist and asked him, who does number 2 work for? Like a bunch of times, who does number 2 work for? Well, who does Fauci work for? Who does Fauci really work for? No matter where you are, if you're awake, if you're reading, Vanity Fair is now coming out with this thing about the lab leak and Fauci. But if you're awake and aware, don't tell me that you're not asking about just how much power do the federal bureaucrats actually have? Just how much power do they have? The kind of power where they tell everybody in Ukraine from our embassy there that just wait, Trump will be out of office soon, and don't worry, we're still in control. We don't want you to look into this thing that involved a bunch of ex-US federal government people being on the board of a natural gas company that has all its accounts in Cyprus, which is notorious for offshore accounts. No. Well, don't worry. We're not going to look into this. We're going to give you a do not prosecute list to Ukrainian prosecutor because we're still in charge. And then when they did the impeachment thing, they actually had the gall to change the rules for whistleblowers so that a whistleblower did not have to have direct knowledge. I'm talking about the Ukraine thing now. So just how powerful is the deep state? Just how powerful are the bureaucrats? Who do they work for? It's not the UN. It's not leftists, the radical left, in my opinion. I think, in my opinion, talking about the radical left is actually a mistake. Because to me, the people who are really in charge are cynical, God-hating, devoid of conscience, empty, soulless, old fossils who use religion, use race, use their low opinion of the IQ of the people, which in some ways is well-deserved, to control, get what they want, and above all, manage the message. Manage the message. Just doesn't matter how many people die. And that's why whoever they are, we see them by their works. And to me, we're never putting this back in Pandora's box, because Pandora's box was already open with manipulating viruses and claiming that these, we have to do this because the next pandemic, we need to research it. Well, then how come we never actually found out what happened with SARS-1 or HIV? How come there's no transparency there? And yet you want to move on to this new one. And by the way, I have never said that SARS-2 doesn't exist. Like, the straw man argument, Trumpers or right-wing people say SARS-2 doesn't exist. But I will say it was hard to get my mind around it because the flu deaths were used. Okay, there was a lot of number manipulation by the CDC, and I have the proof of that. But so why would they need to manipulate the deaths to make them look worse? To basically hijack the global narrative and push mail-in voting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Get back control from these nativists, as George W. Bush would say. There's a nativist movement now. Yeah, you dumbass. You're the one who named it Homeland Security, and it sounded like a fascist state when you first named it Homeland Security after 9/11. Probably wasn't his decision anyway. Such a fucking lackey. Sorry, excuse my French.
Just give me 1 second. I'll be right with you.
Okay. I feel like Christian Walker, Herschel Walker's son, he does a Starbucks order every morning when he's doing his political videos, and he's conservative, and he'll be like, and this, and he'll go, I would like 2 shots of espresso in a venti cup with ice, 1 pump mocha. Oh, hi, that wasn't my order, by the way. I was just joking. Thank you. Can I get a venti flat white? And then Christian Walker goes, 1 pump mocha, 1 pump vanilla. Thank you. And then if they repeat his order wrong, he's like, LA, these Democrat-run cities, they can't even get my order right. So Fauci's going down. They're going to try to massage it. They're going to try to minimize it. They're going to try to get people not to look at the actual emails. And this actually works. This actually works on the American public. They're going to put their headlines up, and people are going to believe that whatever their headlines put up in the Washington Post, the New York Times, CNN, USA Today is the most important point of the emails. That is how I used to think too. I want to thank my child, my son, for allowing me to do this video on a busy Friday. This was the only time I could do it. But I want you to know I'm grateful for you. Please give me your comments. And also, if you haven't yet read my article, go to the website, facts.com. Right there on the front page is my article about this lab leak. And it has tons of links so that you don't have to share my article. You can share the more mainstream stuff, because I know I've been labeled. Don't really care, but... So have a wonderful weekend. And like Christian Walker says, bye.